Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Renault Master camper conversion. It's been a bit of a delay in making and releasing videos because if you've been keeping up with my videos, you'll know that we've done a trip through Scandinavia, which was 9 weeks. I started the journey about 10 weeks ago and I spent about a week in Kent when I got back, and now I'm back into my home, Southampton, and I'm going to carry on building this van. The first thing we're going to do is fit the windows in the van, and this episode we'll be covering the fixed glass on the sliding door. Reason I'm jumping straight onto the windows is because once you add windows or even stickers or decals to a van, and then we need to notify the DVLA. So I want to leave myself enough time to notify the DVLA while I'm finishing the rest of the build. So by the time the build is complete, the DVLA would have done the change of use and then it will be complete fully. First place to start would be to clean in the panel we're going to fit the window to, so it gives it some time to dry. So I'm going to do that now. We'll move on to the next stage. Next, you want to unpack your glass and check that it's not damaged and lay it in the way you're going to fit it onto the van. So I've got it here and I'm going to fit it there. So to make things easier for myself and to keep the glass protected and out the way, I've measured it up and transferred all the measurements onto this piece of card. So we've got the overall length, the overall width, and then it has a black tinted part around the edge. This is where you glue the glass to the metal framework. So I have measured from the edge of the glass to where the black tinted bit ends, and then I've got the measurements. We've got 180, 95, 105 and 95. So now I've got this, I can pack this glass back up and put it away safely. This particular glass, you can see the black border line that I was showing. So this section here is where we're going to glue our frame. So we're going to want our cut to be smaller than that so we don't see it through the actual tinted glass. It's slightly tinted to give privacy, but we will be able to see it out from the inside, and we don't want to see rough metal edges on the inside. So we're going to cut our metal below this line, and then we've got enough meat on there to glue it onto the frame to get a nice bond and a neat finish. Before we cut anything, it's the best idea just to give it a wipe round, remove any dust or debris, and then we move on to the next stage, which would be to minus the 95 from the top and the 95 from the bottom off the 688, which gives us 498. And we're going to do the same for the length, so we're going to minus the 180 and the 105 off for the 1420, and it gives us 1135. So now I'm going to measure from here to here and here to here. Now I did buy the window for this door, but we're going to double check it before we cut anything and then find out that it doesn't fit. So we're going to make sure it all fits and everything before we cut it. When we're happy, then we're going to cut this out and get it bonded in. This line here is the border between the dark part of the glass and the viewing piece of the glass where we can see through. So I transferred this line onto the inside of the van using masking tape, and the way I'd done it was I measured from the top of this little framework lip and the bottom of that lip and found a centre point. Once I got the centre point, I looked back at my drawing, and the part of the clear glass is 498. So I divided that by 2 and I measured down 249 and marked it there, 249 up, marked it there, same on the other side. And then we have a border of where the clear glass is going to sit. So I'm happy with that. The horizontal line is a bit more confusing because this drawing was made from the outside, so it's got to be the other way around. But it's okay, we can work back to front. So the 180 would be this side. So the way I've done this was I divided the 1420 in half, which gave me 710. And then I also found the centre of this, which is here. And then I have the centre, and I've got the 2 halves of the window. I minus the 180 from 710, which gives me 530. And then obviously working back to front, I measure from here to here, it's 530. So that's where the black part will end. And then on the other side, I have 105, so I minus the 105 off the 710, which gives me 605, and I measure from the centre to here, and it's just on the edge there. But I don't think it's going to sit there. I think it's going to sit a little bit more this way. We're going to try and check that now. But as it stands, it's going to fit okay, so I'm happy with that. And calculating this is I'm measuring that, it's roughly 45mm. These measurements don't need to be exact. And then we're going to transfer this 45mm on over here. Now the camera angle's not quite right, but yeah, like I said, it doesn't need to be exact, so it's just roughly 45mm, so I've marked it there. I had to close the door to show you the next bit. So we've got that line marked on there, which is right up against that rubber. I don't know if you can see it. So now I've got this line on the inside. I'm going to measure from that line and put a rough mark at 105, and 105 is the thickness of the black border on the window, the piece you can't see through. So I've marked it here, 105, and then I can measure from that edge there to a line which is 35mm. Doesn't look like it because it's at an angle, but it is 35mm. This was the original line that I drew, so I've moved it over 35mm, which takes me there, and then the gap from there to there is 35mm. With them both being 35mm, I would say that that was where it's supposed to sit. Like I said, this is just rough lines, just to make sure that nothing's gonna not fit right before we cut a hole in the side of the van. But now I've got this, sort of these little guide marks there, just so I'm happy I know where it's gonna sit, and now I'm gonna cut it out. One other thing I needed to do was just stick some tape along here, just making this straight, so when I cut it out I can cut it out straight. Start by cutting out this support rail using an angle grinder, and I'm just going to put some cardboard and some dust sheets just to protect stuff from the sparks. Once you cut your top and your bottom, we're going to try and remove the centre bar, which can be bonded in by glue. This van is 5 years old, so the chances are that it's come loose, and I can just pull it off. So it's loose at the bottom, and I just peel it off. And now we can use a jigsaw to cut it from the outside, so we can get some drill holes in this. I've come across a bit of an issue, and the issue is that lip where that copper pipe's sitting. And this is the exact reason why I've put all these bits of tape on there. I've measured it all, I've tried to work out how it's going to sit before I cut anything out, because now I can find a remedy to make this look a little bit better than it would if I cut it straight out and couldn't get the U-trim on the bottom. So the U-trim itself fits within the groove, so it's definitely not going to cover this gap once I've cut it. This is where the copper pipe comes in. Now the copper pipe is 15mm and the depth of the U-trim is 15mm. So if I cut here, the U-trim will still sit in this groove, and then we can get the U-trim all the way round and get a nice neat finish. The only issue is we're going to have this bit of a lip. Now this lip here is not too bad, but this is going to be a bit rough because there isn't this piece kicking out. It's rough metal, but we can find something at a later date to cover this over, like a sill or something like that. But for now, I have got a plan, and I'm going to cut this out and get this window fitted. Now I've got a plan in my head. I'm going to start with putting a few incisions in here, here and here with the angle grinder, so then I can get the jigsaw in there. There's my 3 incisions. I'll come inside the van because it'll probably be less windy. So I'm going to cut from the side of the van. I'll obviously video it in a time lapse, and then I'll probably start here to try and get this curve in, and I'm going to use this copper as a guide rail. I'm going to cut out half of it, and I'm going to do the same with the incisions on the other side, and then do the other side. We're not off to a great start with this one, so the blades kept snapping. That's what was happening when I was stopping. These universal fit are no good from B&Q, so don't use these. I'm going to go and get some more blades now because I've gone through 3. I thought 3 blades would be enough for the teeth. Didn't realise they was going to snap. This corner up here, the jigsaw was hitting on the corner, so I had to use a grinder, as you saw in the video, to finish it off. So I'm going to go and get some more blades now, and hopefully got a bit better luck on the next run. I was finding it difficult to do the ends of the cuts with the jigsaw because I was having to extend my arm out and trying to see from the side, both sides, I couldn't really concentrate on holding the jigsaw straight, so I'm going to cut that top bit with an angle grinder, which I was trying to avoid because of the sparks and the dirt it makes, but I need to get this job done, and then I'll cut that panel off using the jigsaw, and then I'll be able to get in there to do the other panel. I'm getting a much better result with the angle grinder, so I'm now going to cut this line from the outside, remove this panel, and then I can get this last bit out, which I might possibly finish with the angle grinder. I cut it out using the angle grinder, and then I use the jigsaw in the corners. I found it a lot easier with a grinder. You just got to worry about the sparks and metal dust going everywhere. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's done. So I've got another idea about this little bit here. I'm going to cut this out, the glue, and try and clamp it together. Now, I don't know if it's going to distort the framework, but we'll try it, and if it does, then I can just re-glue it. If it's good, then I'll cut it off, and then I'll get the U-trim on there. What I just done then was went round it with a grinding blade to take any burrs off, smooth it off a little bit, and I finished up with a bit of sandpaper. Now, I know it's going to be covered, but I'm working on it. I don't want to cut myself, so it's just for safety, really. So I've cut all that glue out using a multi-tool. It does bend in without too much stress. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut it off there where it's supposed to be cut, and then I'm going to get my U-trim in there to size, ready to fit, and I'm going to take the U-trim out along the bottom, glue up along there where I cut the glue out, and then put the U-trim back on to hold it where it wants to be. Now we have the aperture cut out to the right size and the U-trim fits, and I'm happy that everything's going to go together nicely. I'm now going to prime around the edge of the window. I'm making the video from the inside of the van because it's a bit windy, but I will video what I'm doing, and then I'm going to prime where I cut just to protect any bare metal. I'm going to leave that for 15 minutes while I have lunch, and then I will seal down the bottom, glue the panels back together, and then put the U-trim in. Now I've fitted the U-trim, the work on the van is complete, so the next stage would be to get the glass out, prepare that, and then finally glue it in. Now it's time to prepare the glass. I first of all cleaned it with this, just to give it a double clean, and then I used the alcohol wipe primer that comes with it. So now that's done and it's ready for the primer to go around the edge, then we can leave it for a while, and then we'll be ready to stick it on. I've done it inside because it's a little bit windy outside. It needs 15 minutes for the primer to dry, and dust could get stuck to it as well as it blowing off the platform. So in here safest, and then we can move it outside when we're ready to stick it on. That is job done. So I'm using that suction pad just to hold it in place. It's well on there already. One thing I will say is this stuff is incredibly tough to squeeze out of here. I've seen people using sort of the electric mastic guns, which might be a better idea, because I had to try and use two hands on the handle and try and guide it in a straight line. I think it does have a little guide bit on there, but as you can see, holding it at the end with two hands, it's wriggling all over the place, so I didn't have much control over it. So yeah, it might be a better idea to use an electric mastic gun than trying to do that, because that was really difficult.